Tonight on Bridge City News, a 55-year-old man has been charged following an on-ice incident at a Pee Wee hockey game in Lethbridge. A few superheroes made their way to Chinook Hospital today to bring big smiles to both patients and staff. And the Canadian Armed Forces have been called in to help with the cleanup as Hurricane Dorian slammed into the Maritimes.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Robbins.
Good evening, thanks so much for joining us. Hockey fans are known to be quite passionate, but one incident at a Pee Wee hockey game at the ATP Centre on Sunday went a little overboard. Lethbridge police have charged a 55-year-old man with assault after a video surfaced of the man jumping on the ice and attacking a referee. Robert Farrell Crichton of Standoff was released from custody and will appear in court to answer to the charge on October 9th. A statement has been released by High Performance Hockey, which hosted the tournament. It said, "Actions like this have no place in our game. The quest for the Cup tournament is an opportunity for players to enjoy the game of hockey with their friends. For that reason, we are especially disappointed to see an act like this occur." Additional charges are pending against a 36-year-old male who took part in the incident but left the building and has not yet been located by police. A few superheroes made an appearance at the Chinook Hospital earlier today to bring smiles to both patients and staff.
Basically, this is just a feel-good event where the superheroes will come every year or two and interact with the patients, with the kids especially. But as you can see, that there's a lot of public and staff joining in as well. They'll be interacting, through the glass as they climb the ropes up to the 6th floor of the hospital, and they'll be available for chatting with the kids after they descend.
Because I'm Batman.
Well, when the kids have a positive attitude and outlook on life, it reflects in everything they do. And if they're sick, it potentially can help them to get better. At a small level, but positive attitude makes a big difference.
Trying to be safe and throwing some things for the kids too, so usually I'm not really jumping around, but it's nice to do some stuff. Hang upside down and do what we can to see them smile. So not the normal job from the day to day, but it's nice to come out here and do that. So.
This is the 4th straight year the superheroes have made an appearance at the Chinook Regional Hospital. The Western Diversification Program is receiving a funding boost from Ottawa to the tune of $8.5 million. The money will go towards projects in Lethbridge, Coaldale, and Foremost. Lethbridge is receiving a couple of large grants, including one for $3 million that will go to Southland Trailer Corporation to scale up the manufacturing capacity of gravel and highway trailer product lines while also reducing waste. Flexa Hopper Plastics will also be receiving just over $1.3 million. That money will go toward improving the productivity of rotomolding manufacturing processes with the new thermal flex system. The Chinook Royal Canadian Sea Cadets in Lethbridge are looking for more members. Sea Cadets is a free program focusing on citizenship, leadership, and fitness. It's open to all youth aged 12 to 18. They have a goal of reaching 40 members this year so they can expand some of their programs.
We have a military band that we are actively looking for new members in. Having a number of 40 cadets would allow us to have a larger band that would certainly complement our parades. We're going to be teaching all of our cadets how to drive power boats safely, how to maintain them, how to really sail larger vessels as well. We've got some 27-foot sailboats that we're going to be utilizing, as well as some power boats. Really teaching our community's youth to be good citizens, work well with others, maintain good physical fitness, and perhaps spark an interest in the Canadian Forces.
Registration will be open Monday evenings from 6:15 till 9:15 at the Armory's Navy League building in Lethbridge. A Colehurst woman discovered a hidden talent in the midst of battling cancer. BCN's Loris Alexander spoke with a survivor about her art therapy.
I was actually pregnant with my second child, and I went in for a prenatal exam, and he did a breast exam and found a lump, sent me in for tests, and discovered I had breast cancer.
That was 2 years ago. Mulder is now cancer-free and isn't just surviving, she's thriving. A stark contrast to what life was like when she first got the unwelcome news.
At first, we really didn't process it at all. It's really hard to, I guess, wrap your mind around that. But not good. Lots of tears. Yeah, lots of anger.
Mulder was 13 weeks pregnant when she had a miscarriage 2 days prior to her scheduled mastectomy.
I think it would have had a lot to do with the stress, but also my body probably wasn't strong enough to be able to carry a child.
But the light at the end of the tunnel brought Mulder to, let's just say, mountainous success.
I've always been kind of creative and I really like painting. And then I was scrolling through Pinterest and I found these mountain pictures that I thought were absolutely beautiful. And since I'm from the mountains and love wildlife and stuff, I decided I wanted to give it a go. So called my dad, asked him how hard they would be, and set me up with a few things and showed me how to do it, and off I went.
Mulder says her newfound business keeps her very busy. For more information, please visit mountainsidestudio.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Loris Alexander.
RCMP and Airdrie have laid a first-degree murder charge following a shooting over the weekend. At around 5 p.m. on Saturday afternoon, police responded to shots being fired in the Canals neighborhood in Airdrie, just north of Calgary. Upon arrival, police found an injured male at the residence who was pronounced dead at the scene a short time later. 59-year-old Michael Anthony Roebuck of Airdrie is charged with first-degree murder. He'll make his first court appearance on September 19th. Police are asking for help with this investigation. If you saw the incident, please call Crime Stoppers right away at 1-800-222-8477. As you've heard on BCN, China has made life pretty tough for our farmers. The Asian nation has refused imports of Canadian canola for quite some time. I asked the Alberta Agriculture Minister, Devin Dreeshen, what's the latest when it comes to our trade relationship with China?
Relationships between Canada and China have been getting worse. And it is something that, farmers at the end of the day are trying, they're wanting to, they grow amazing canola products. They want to be able to sell it to China and around the world. And there are other countries that are picking up our canola, and that is a positive, good thing. But at the end of the day, China's about 40% or was 40% of our canola exports. And to see that market disappear overnight has been a big issue for canola farmers in Alberta.
Catch the full interview with the Alberta Agriculture and Forestry Minister Devin Dreeshen coming up after business news. The Manitoba Liberal Party has promised if they win tomorrow's election, they would use hundreds of millions of dollars a year from the carbon tax to pay for their promises. Party leader Dougal Lamont says some income tax credits would remain aimed at low to middle income earners. Lamont has promised more than $1 billion on seniors' home care, road work, and childcare spaces. He says the extra spending he's proposing would create more jobs, which in turn would generate more tax revenue for the government to help balance the budget. With the federal election campaign set to begin any day now, the Assembly of First Nations is outlining its election priorities. The AFN's main focus is mitigating the effects of climate change. National Chief Perry Bellegarde says after years of promises, First Nations is urging federal party leaders to take urgent action on the environment in partnership with Indigenous consultation.
It's our time to commit to action to save our planet and ourselves, to commit to ensure all children are equipped to build a prosperous future, and to commit to a promise that health, education, the economy, and justice systems will work for everyone. The plan we call Honoring Promises points the way to real transformative change, and we say the time to act is now.
This is a beautiful time of year, isn't it? Soon the leaves will be changing colors, we roll into fall, but that also means winter is not far away. I asked Jack Burnett with the Old Farmer's Almanac what kind of winter we can expect to see here in Canada.
We're calling it Game of Snows. Pretty snowy, not quite so cold, but still, it's a Canadian winter. And the only exceptions to that are in central and eastern Quebec, over in BC, and then actually right where you are, where we expect it to be not quite so cold, but by the same token, not quite so snowy, and more of the edge precipitation, I'm afraid to say.
Jack Burnett with the Old Farmer's Almanac will have more in detail what we can expect weather-wise over the next year, coming up in the second half of our show. Hundreds of Canadian Armed Forces personnel have been deployed across Atlantic Canada to help clear debris. A storm with hurricane-force winds hit the Maritimes over the weekend, leaving 400,000 people without power. Repairs began Sunday to down power lines and buildings struck by splinter trees. The remnants of Hurricane Dorian uprooted trees and damaged many homes and cars.
We would sit down by the window, everything, and we hear a big bang. We look, we see the tree fell on the front of our house and the roof. It's kind of hard to go outside the front door because the branch all over it. And we're going to wait till Monday, call my insurance, see what's going to happen.
Last night, lost power about 2 o'clock yesterday, been without power since. Windy, not as bad as Warren, it doesn't seem like. We lost a large limb off the tree in our front yard. Just cleaning that up now. Back to normal today pretty much, except for the power loss. Basically it sounds like a train. It's just a constant rumble. With our trees here, every time the wind would gust, it would go from the trees looking normal to almost like collapsing like umbrellas. It was interesting. Sheets of rain, basically you can see the waves of rain coming down. Yeah, I mean, the noise is one thing you don't really expect, but the best thing I can use to describe it is it sounds like a freight train.
Search and rescue teams are still trying to reach some communities in the Bahamas isolated by floodwaters and debris after Hurricane Dorian slammed into the islands. The official death toll has now risen to 43 and is likely to increase even more. The islands were devastated by Dorian. The search for victims and survivors has gone on for 5 days since Dorian slammed into the Bahamas with winds of 295 kilometers an hour that obliterated countless homes. The U.S. Coast Guard says searchers are still looking for 4 missing crew members of a cargo ship that overturned near a port during a fire on board the vessel. The Coast Guard said Sunday that 20 people were safely rescued from the stricken vessel.
The vessel Golden Ray was reported to be listing heavy to starboard. The Coast Guard Command Center in Charleston received a report that the vessel, on its departure, had heavily rolled to starboard and was leaning on it was leaning on its port side as it made a starboard turn to depart the harbor. Coast Guard crews, along with partner agencies and commercial assistance providers, as well as South Carolina Department of Natural Resources and Moran Towing, made several rescues from the vessel at multiple points. 20 of the 24 people on board have been rescued at this time. As smoke and flames began to appear, our crews, along with the Glenn County Heavy Rescue Team, assessed that the situation was too risky to further go inside the vessel to attempt to locate the 4 individuals who remain missing at this time.
U.S. President Donald Trump presented a Medal of Valor to 6 Ohio police officers today who responded to the mass shooting in Dayton last month. He also recognized 5 civilians who risked their lives when a gunman opened fire at a Texas Walmart.
Today I'm honored to welcome you to the White House as we recognize 11 extraordinary American heroes. These incredible patriots responded to the worst violence and most barbaric hatred with the best of American courage, character, and strength. Faced with grave and harrowing threats, the men and women standing behind us stepped forward to save the lives of their fellow Americans. Few people could have done, and even would have done, what they did. Just after 1 a.m. on August 4th, these officers were patrolling the streets of downtown Dayton when the killer opened fire into an innocent crowd. The shooter continued firing as he ran down a sidewalk packed with people. Sergeant William Knight was stationed in his cruiser about 150 feet away. He heard the gunfire, jumped out of his car, and quickly returned fire. Meanwhile, Officer Brian Rolfus ran directly towards the shooter and into the onslaught of incoming bullets. Then officers Jeremy Campbell, Vincent Carter, Ryan Nabel, and David Denlinger moved in, engaging the shooter at close range, calling upon years of training in the span of an instant. Within 32 seconds of the start of the attack, these 6 officers ended the violent rampage and saved countless lives.
As the United Kingdom faces an ongoing political crisis and escalating gun and knife crime, at least 5,000 Christians came together at London's Wembley Arena for a day of prayer. Leaders from all denominations got together and led prayers throughout the day for healing and restoration of that nation.
Britain for Jesus! But I want you to pray for Northern Ireland. Reach out your hands. Holy Spirit, fall afresh on our nation. That you are coming out of this crisis, for Great Britain shall recover one more time.
The Canadian Country Music Association Awards were dished out in Calgary last night. The big winners included Langley, BC's Dallas Smith, who won Male Vocalist of the Year, and Tennille Towns of Grand Prairie, who took the Female Vocalist Award. The event, hosted by Smith and Billy Ray Cyrus, also saw Brett Kissel named as the Fans' Choice Award winner.
It's such an incredible honor to be chosen by the fans. I think everybody in this business, we do this specifically for our fan base and for building our fan base. To get the opportunity to hold that trophy tonight in Alberta is extremely special, and to celebrate with everybody here in Calgary, across the province and across Canada who voted for me, it's extremely special because this is the only award in the Canadian Country Music Association that's not voted on by the industry.
Congratulations to all of the winners. Now here is a cute little story. A hawk that was struck by a vehicle on Bridge Drive in Lethbridge is back on its wings thanks to the help from some police officers and some concerned locals. Police in Lethbridge shared details about the bird story on Twitter, saying a concerned motorist used a snow brush to get the hawk off the road. A local falconer who was driving by stopped to secure the little guy for transport to the Birds of Prey Centre. The Post says the hawk has made a full recovery. That's so good to see. Slightly cooler day today in the Windy City with showers and rain off and on. Will the rain continue? Complete weather details are coming up. Clouds and showers again today. Tonight, more rain developing with a low near 7. Tomorrow, good chance of showers developing with a high near 11. Wednesday, overcast with a high of 15. The clouds should clear out on Thursday, bringing us lots of sunshine and a high near 21. A few clouds at 21 degrees again on Friday. Even warmer on Saturday with a high near 23 expected. Sunday, a low-pressure system returns, bringing more clouds and a high of 16 degrees. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 21 and an average low of 6. The highest temperature on this date was recorded in 1981 at 32 degrees, and the record low was -1 in 1959. Sunrise was at 6:58, sunset at 7:59. Let's see how tomorrow's shaping up across the country. Rain at 19 is on tap for Victoria, a chance of showers as well, and 20 degrees for Vancouver. Periods of rain and only 10 degrees for Calgary on Tuesday. Rain and 13 for Edmonton. Showers off and on and 13 for Regina tomorrow. Rain and 12 degrees for Saskatoon. Expect showers and 17 for Winnipeg. Cloudy and a 30% chance of showers and a high of 25 for Toronto tomorrow. Showers and 20 degrees for Ottawa. Cloudy and 20 degrees as well for Montreal. In the Maritimes, which is still cleaning up from Hurricane Dorian, Fredericton, New Brunswick will be mainly cloudy and 21. Lots of sunshine and 21 degrees as well for Halifax, Nova Scotia. Just a few clouds and 19 for Charlottetown, PEI. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect rain and a high of only 17 degrees tomorrow. A bill designed to prevent British Prime Minister Boris Johnson from taking the UK out of the European Union without a divorce deal has become law. The legislation received royal approval from Queen Elizabeth earlier today. This will force Johnson to seek an extension of the October 31st Brexit deadline if no new deal is reached. The new law is opposed by Johnson's government, and it is confirmed it will suspend Parliament now until October 14th. Volkswagen is rolling out what it calls the breakthrough electric car for the masses. It is the leading edge of a wave of battery-operated vehicles to hit the European auto market. The car is the result of massive investments in battery technology and new factories being driven by environmental legislation. VW and other car makers are showing off their latest electric car offerings at this year's Frankfurt Auto Show in Germany. Canada's requested a formal meeting with China at the World Trade Organization to resolve the Chinese ban on Canadian canola. International Trade Minister Jim Carr says Canada is seeking a bilateral consultation at the WTO because the two sides have been unable to resolve the issue. China's decision to ban our canola came following the arrest of Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou in Vancouver on a U.S. extradition warrant. Carr says that Canada's action at the WTO is part of its commitment to rules-based international trade on behalf of Canadian farmers who've been hit hard by the canola ban. China says August imports from the United States fell 22.5% amid its tariff war with Washington. Exports to the U.S., meanwhile, fell 16%. Imports of American goods fell to $10.3 billion, while exports to the United States sank to $44.4 billion. Chinese exporters are also facing pressure from weakening global demand at a time when Beijing is telling them to find other markets to replace the United States. Conservative Party leader Andrew Scheer says if he's elected next month, his government would create a certification system to let consumers know if certain digital products meet federal security standards.
We will apply regulatory standards for the ethical and secure use of artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things, which protect the privacy of consumers and their data. An expert committee with industry leaders will define binding cybersecurity standards for critical infrastructure sectors and penalties for non-compliance. And as Prime Minister, I will also establish a cabinet committee on cybersecurity and data privacy and conduct quarterly cybersecurity testing on all departments.
Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, an incident at a Pee Wee hockey game at the ATP Centre on Sunday went awry. Lethbridge police have charged a 55-year-old man with assault after a video surfaced of the man jumping onto the ice and attacking a referee. Robert Farrell Crichton of Standoff was released from custody and will appear in court to answer to the charge on October the 9th. The Chinese canola embargo is taking its toll on our farmers, but fortunately other markets are opening up for producers. Alberta Agriculture Minister Devin Dreeshen has details next. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News Community Calendar. Are you going through divorce or separation? Find support and encouragement with Divorce Care, a support group that will be meeting weekly beginning Tuesday, September 10th at City Light Church from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Cost is $30 for the workbook. For more information, visit divorcecare.org or call John and Sandy Dick at 403-892-7046. It's the 39th annual Lethbridge Terry Fox Community Run, taking place Sunday, September 15th at the Civic Center track, featuring special guest Fred Fox. Registration begins at 11 a.m. with the run at noon. No entry fee is required. Participants are welcome to walk, run, rollerblade, and cycle. For more information, email lethbridgeterryfoxrun@gmail.com or register online at terryfox.ca. Lethbridge Legal Guidance is a nonprofit society offering free legal advice to low-income Southern Albertans. It holds clinics on Tuesdays from 5 to 7 p.m. by appointment only. Some of the areas the society assists in include family, criminal, traffic, immigration, EI, and other issues. For more information, call 403-380-6338 or email lethbridgelegalguidance@telus.net. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The agriculture and forestry industry in Alberta is vital to the economic health of our province. Joining me now to discuss this today is Devin Dreeshen, Alberta Minister of Agriculture and Forestry. Now, first of all, Devin, can you explain how much the ag sector contributes to the Alberta economy?
Well, it's over $23 billion. It's the second largest sector in our province, so it's very important. And also it covers so many different aspects of the province at every corner, from the Peace region down to Lethbridge. It's so important to the rural areas here in the province.
Where are things at in China when it comes to the current ban on canola exports from Canada?
Well, ultimately, it's disappointing that Alberta farmers are having to pay the price for this diplomatic dispute. It's something that the federal government has been asleep at the switch, which is unfortunate when they see that, they haven't been able to resolve this. Just relationships between Canada and China have been getting worse. And it is something that, farmers at the end of the day are trying, they're wanting to, they grow amazing canola products. They want to be able to sell it to China and around the world. And there are other countries that are picking up our canola, and that is a positive, good thing. But at the end of the day, China's about 40% or was 40% of our canola exports. And to see that market disappear overnight has been a big issue for canola farmers in Alberta.
So outside of China, what are some of the other countries? At the United States? How about other countries in Asia?
The U.S. is the top actual exporter that we have, but there are other Asian countries that are starting to pick up, and grain companies in Canada are looking for other markets to sell, but it's more difficult. Those are more traditional soybean markets, so that they are selling at a depressed lower price, and at the end of the day, that just hurts farmers in the pocketbook.
Now, Devin, you are our agriculture minister, but you're also a farmer yourself, right? How's harvest season going so far?
Yeah, agriculture and forestry, but yeah, farming so far has been really good. Over the long weekend, we actually took some barley off, so that was my Labor Day weekend. But I farm near southeast of Pine Lake, and it's actually been a pretty good growing year so far. We haven't got tons of rain like they have in some areas, or drought, especially down in southern Alberta that farmers have been facing. So it's Alberta. It's always difficult, challenging weather, but for me personally, it's been a overall pretty good harvest.
Let's talk about China for just a moment again here, Devin. I hear that wheat farmers have been able to significantly increase exports to China because of the trade dispute with the United States. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, so from this time last year, we're about 50% higher in our wheat sales to China. So that is a positive. It's a plus. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we haven't seen wheat prices climb to where farmers have seen it in the last few years. But overall, we have amazing grain companies here in Canada that sell globally because our farmers do such a great job of producing more than we could ever possibly consume here in Canada. So export, trade, market access, it's so important to the agriculture sector out in Western Canada. And that's why Alberta, we have trade offices around the world. And we actually had Minister Tanya Furr, our economic trade minister. She went on a trip to Japan and Korea, two important agriculture markets a couple months ago to promote trade and market access for our farmers. So it's something that this government, we understand the economics around our exports and the benefits that come with it. So we're very, very supportive of helping out that industry.
Now let's discuss the energy efficiency programs that were being offered to farmers to help with solar panels or upgrading irrigation and grain drying systems. That was being funded through the provincial carbon tax. So will these programs be stopped now?
So, well, one of the great things that our government, we campaigned on, and we're happy to eliminate the carbon tax. So whether that's natural gas that people see on their homes or just fueling up their gas tanks, it's something that they see that immediate benefit. But then that carbon tax, some of it was used to pay for these types of programs. And as a government, we're supportive of alternative uses or production of electricity or energy. But at the end of the day, we just don't believe that taxpayers should be subsidizing it.
Now, speaking of that carbon tax, now that Alberta acts the tax, although we'll have to wait till January if the Liberals get back in, it'll be back here with the federal tax. To what degree is this helping the financial burden in the agriculture sector now that Alberta doesn't have that carbon tax?
It's a huge benefit, and it's something that we heard. We didn't just dream it up. We heard from industry and farmers saying that they don't understand why there is a carbon tax. It's a regulatory, or it's an impediment for them on a competition side of, they compete around the world globally on their exports, and other countries around the world that they compete with, like the US even, they don't have a carbon tax. So it was an extra added cost to our industry, and so that's why we campaigned to get rid of it. So that has been a positive, a huge benefit to farmers because they were paying lots in carbon tax. But it goes beyond just even the agriculture sector. There is just locally, my gas co-op collected about $2 million in carbon tax from ratepayers from around the area. So that's something that now we'll especially see in the winter that people aren't going to be having to pay for that carbon tax on natural gas.
Let's chit-chat a bit now about the Farm Freedom and Safety Act, which will be replacing the controversial Bill 6. Devin, I understand one of the beefs farmers had was being forced to buy workplace insurance from WCB. They wanted to have the option of buying private insurance. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, well, that's something that we heard at every single stop. We had about 25 stops in total. There was about 8,000 kilometers that I put on the truck throughout the entire tour that happened the summer, and that was a unanimous thing that came up at every single stop. Was, farmers would come in and say, I've had private insurance and had it for years, and it covers my workers whether they're off the job or they're on vacation or they're traveling, and it's timely, it pays out well, and it's something that we are going to keep. But with Bill 6 at the NDP, the previous government brought in, they were forced to go out and buy and pay WCB premiums. So they ended up paying 2 premiums when they had no intention of using WCB. So that I would see that would be in the upcoming legislation to be able to remove that mandatory WCB coverage.
What about small farms? Are they going to be exempt from employment legislation? If so, what really qualifies as maybe a small farm?
Well, and that was, again, a big discussion that came up at the consultations was, how do you define a small farm? What is a small farm? What's a family farm? How far down the line do you go? And it did bring up a lot of questions of, why can't we kind of have a best management practice to be able to say, whether it's an environmental farm plan that lots of farms do, but even a workplace farm plan to say, this is the type of work that we do. Let's educate, let's promote a culture of safety up front, rather than being prescriptive down the road of, this is what each farm should have to do. Because at the end of the day, every farm is different. There's so many different variations of the type of farms and type of agriculture that we have in the province. So to try to find a one-size-fits-all set of rules is next to impossible. And at the end of the day, it's not practical.
Now, another thing farmers wanted to change was to have less regulations and red tape. Are there some specific areas where you're going to do that?
Something that our government, we're almost obsessed with looking at red tape and trying to eliminate it. And it's not just reducing regulations or burdensome legislation that doesn't make sense, but it's also looking at compliance costs. So whether there be regulations that farmers have had to deal with, or applications to programs, whether it's AFSC, for example, we want to be able to streamline and make sure that there's better connectivity, there's a better service standard that farmers are receiving when they deal with the government of Alberta.
Where are the beef and pork industries at right now? What are some of the big challenges they're facing?
Well, they're also facing a China issue as well. They have China's banned, or they've not allowed exports of cattle and hog products. So that's been an issue, and they've revoked and removed some export licenses from some facilities even here in Alberta. So that's a big frustration and difficulty. But again, when it comes to livestock, the U.S. is our number one customer. And it was actually a little startling that there were some U.S. Democrats that were promoting bringing back COOL, a country of origin labeling, which at the end of the day is just a $1 billion+ red tape initiative that would have unnecessary labeling requirements of Canadian and American pork and beef. And at the end of the day, just hurts the industry. And it's something that on both sides, the common sense farmers would understand and say that, no, this is actually a bad idea. And it's something that we thought was actually eliminated a long time ago, but it is concerning to hear these, the ghost of COOL coming back and Democrats talking about it again. So hopefully that stays dead and buried.
What are your thoughts on the new NAFTA or the USMCA? Is that going to be helping Alberta farmers?
At the end of the day, it's, again, with the U.S. being our number one consumer and buyer of agriculture products, there's still that good free flow and free trade in a lot of aspects. So to me, on the agriculture side, there was no harm done. There wasn't new tariffs added. So that was a great thing. And also for sugar beets on that side, that market actually expanded a lot with the new NAFTA or the USMCA. So that overall, I think it should have been negotiated a lot differently. Lots of commentators were saying that Canada and the U.S. should have signed a bilateral agreement early on in the process, with having the U.S. wanting the change to it because of issues with labor standards and environmental standards from Mexico, and Canada wasn't an irritant to them. But at the end of the day, the U.S. and Mexico signed a deal, and then Canada was in a take it or leave it state at the end of the negotiation. So that was a tactical error, I believe, on the government of Canada part. But at the end of the day, for agriculture, the U.S. is our one and only neighbor, and they are our biggest customer.
That's why we're at the very end. It was the USMCA, it's like right at the very end there. Now, there are a number of climate change special interest groups that are now apparently trying to convince the public that eating beef is a bad thing for the environment. How do you respond to something like that?
I went to Twitter. I even had the Weather Network was complaining about it as well, saying that people need to eat less beef, and it's those types of nonsense and a false narrative that gets pushed out, that as a government we want to be able to work with industry to combat it in real time, and that's why we even campaigned on a fight back strategy for our energy sector as well as our agriculture and forestry sector. So that because there is a growing disconnect between urban and rural, between agriculture and city folk, of the fact that lots of people are moving to cities, and there's even just been generation detachments away from the rural way of life. And to me, that just grows that distance grows a greater possibility of industry groups coming in and spreading fear, misinformation about industry. So to me, that's something that we want to be able to work with industries to be able to tell the good news story that we have on the agriculture side, that we have amazing, whether it's modern agriculture techniques and crops or within livestock, and how good it is for the sustainability of grasslands to have cattle grazing on it. So there's an amazing agriculture story to tell. We just have to make sure it's being told properly.
How are our forests doing right now? We often hear concerns that our forests are being cut down too fast, but there are also reforestation efforts underway. Does Alberta have more trees or less trees than we did, let's say, 20 years ago?
Well, after this was a very bad forest year, so about 800,000 hectares less that we have after this forest fire that happened up in northeastern Alberta.
Right.
But at the end of the day, our forest is old, and it is something that a true healthy forest is about 60 to 80 years old. And we have a lot of 100+ year forests that it's a dead, diseased, old forest, and it's a tinderbox waiting to burn. So we have to be able to work with our forestry companies in a joint management process of our public forests to make sure that we can harvest at a sustainable rate, and that we can actually have healthy forests that will have biodiversity and better for the environment, and at the end of the day be the natural good carbon sink that it could be. But we have to be able to log it properly, because at the end of the day, logging is good, and logging that leads to healthier, younger, better forests. So we have to, again, be able to promote that.
So where are we at right now when it comes to the softwood lumber dispute with the United States?
Well, there was a NAFTA panel that actually just ruled yesterday, which looked at the International Trade Commission ruling that there should not have been damages, or that there wasn't sufficient evidence to show that the U.S. industry is harmed by Canadian exports of softwood lumber. So that, unfortunately, the saga continues. But it is unfortunate that, as from a Canadian standpoint, that they didn't toss it out completely. But there's always another round with NAFTA or with softwood lumber, unfortunately. And so there is a WTO panel and another NAFTA panel that are coming up within the next few months. But it's something that, as a province of Alberta, we understand that there is no economic harm done to the U.S. lumber industry with exports coming in from Canada, and that's a position that we will defend strongly.
Are there any other markets for our wood that Alberta should pursue?
J-grade wood that goes out to Japan is a very high quality, high priced market, and there are other areas, and trade diversification is important. It's just it's so difficult when we have the largest economy, a very large population right next door, to be able to look abroad. But I think it is important to be able to have that diversification on exports, whether it's agriculture or forestry around the world, for sure.
Devin Tereshan, Alberta Minister of Agriculture and Forestry, thanks for joining me today from Edmonton.
Thank you so much, Hal. I appreciate it. Thank you.
The Old Farmer's Almanac has been around for a very long time. In fact, it was first published in 1792, making it the oldest continuously published periodical in North America. Many people believe in the Farmer's Almanac and their long-range weather predictions. That's what we're going to talk about today with Jack Burnett, the managing editor and Canadian spokesperson with the Farmer's Almanac, and he joins me now from Dublin, New Hampshire. Jack, welcome back to BCN.
Thank you very much, Hal. It's always great to be with you and your viewers.
Thanks so much, Jack. For our younger viewers, how would you best describe Farmer's Almanac?
Sure. The Old Farmer's Almanac started, as you said, 228 years ago, and back in its day, it was the Google of its time. So you could look up anything that you wanted to find there rather than going on your laptop, you'd go into your Farmer's Almanac, old Farmer's Almanac, and you'd have it all. Anything that you needed to kind of live your life in a fun and productive way.
Now, according to the 2020 Old Farmer's Almanac Canadian edition, the forecast for most of Canada this winter is not very cold, but will we see lots of the white stuff?
Yeah, very, very snowy. We're calling it Game of Snows. Pretty snowy, not quite so cold, but still, it's a Canadian winter. And the only exceptions to that are in central and eastern Quebec, over in BC, and then actually right where you are, where we expect it to be not quite so cold, but by the same token, not quite so snowy. More of the edge precipitation, I'm afraid to say.
It's interesting. I talked to a lot of my friends and family in Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer. It's been rain and cold all summer. Here, though, in southwestern Alberta and Lethbridge, lots of sunshine and warm temperatures, and I'll take that. We've at least been blessed with a very nice summer so far. Now, the outlook for southern Alberta is a little bit different in that it'll be not so cold, but wet as opposed to snow. Are we going to see a little more of the rain?
Right, a little bit more. We'll find the temperatures, it kind of makes sense. Not quite so cold. So more of those days when they are down in the 30s to be a little bit closer to the lower 30s, so that it stands to reason that you'll be blessed with a little less snow and a little more water. But, this is just kind of a general pattern. It's not some huge winter-long thing.
How about for some of our viewers, Jack, who are joining us in British Columbia, let's talk about maybe the coast, the lower mainland, the island, and then maybe the interior as well.
Yeah, what happens in BC is interesting. It's going to be colder, colder than it is where you are, but it's also going to, and it's also going to be wetter than you are, so to speak. So that would seem to be kind of counterintuitive. But what that says is particularly along the coast, more of the edge precipitation, but the ski areas, they should be okay.
It's interesting. A lot of my friends in Vancouver, they refer to it instead of the west coast, but the wet coast. So I think they're kind of used to some of the moisture. How accurate were your forecasts for last winter? Did you look back?
They were, they were between 71 and 72%, which is down from our usual 80%. It was above 80% in the US, so it kind of slides back and forth. We're into the fourth year of a 4-year experiment into tweaking our ancient formula to account for climate change. We think we have that figured out, and so we'll start incorporating that into our computer algorithms in the future. It'll be fine.
I understand that you do the long-range weather predictions 18 months in advance, a year and a half. How exactly do you predict weather that far in advance?
Good question. Well, we start with the three things that were used by the founder of the Old Farmer's Almanac, a guy named Robert B. Thomas, outside Boston in 1792, as we said. So he used meteorology, which is kind of the local weather phenomena and things that impact it. Climatology, long-term weather trends and patterns, which are important to us. And the third thing that he used was solar science, solar radiation, sunspots. So he was one of the first, if not the first, to think that solar radiation had something to do with it. So what we do now is we have all the weather observations for Lethbridge and Alberta, Canada, US for that matter, that we'd ever been able to find, loaded into a computer, and then we look for a pattern in the past that resembles the present. A weather pattern. So then, for thousands and thousands of locales, then we go back in the past and we say, would it make sense for what happened next back then to happen next now? So we filter it through the things that are important to us. And that, in many respects, is how we do it. A lot of people think, well, you have 100 woolly bear caterpillars crawling around on a table and you see what you do. But no, it's all based on the same scientific data that Environment Canada uses. We just kind of look at it in a different way.
How's the Old Farmer's Almanac when it comes to predicting typhoons and hurricanes? I mean, this is hurricane season right now. We're seeing a lot of the devastation from Hurricane Dorian.
Yeah, that's hard to do. And we only predict things like that when the computers are really throwing up a lot of what I'll call red flags. We actually had predicted Dorian to arrive when it did, but we didn't, and eventually to get to the Maritimes. But when it stalled, that's where we lost it, So we got the arrival okay, because that's what the computers were showing us. But we didn't plan for the stalling. The same thing happens with snowstorms, huge storms, snowstorms or big ones, and blizzards. We only call for them when there's a lot of indication, sort of an anomaly of an indication. And this winter, since you asked, we're actually going to go out on a limb and name a couple of days for Lethbridge. All right, so we're going to name to watch out for snowstorms on December 15th. And right, and ready for this one, March 29th.
Oh, why not say Christmas Eve? That wouldn't be so bad, you know. March 29th.
Yeah. So look like bookends.
Jack, you know what's interesting too is sometimes down in the southern states in the United States we see snow where you don't normally see snow in the wintertime, to places like Texas and Florida. Can those states look forward to seeing more snow potentially this winter?
Well, they're going to be the U.S. map kind of looks like a patchwork quilt. Any type of combination of different temperatures and snow, rain, you can find it in the U.S. And Texas, I think, has 3 or 4, maybe even 5 different little regional happenings. So whatever's out there, part of it's going to happen in Texas.
Now, some of the folks at Environment Canada disagree with your forecasting methods. They say using sunspot activity, moon phases, and the like is simply not scientific. So, Jack, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, we don't use moon phases, and I know that there have been some studies over the past 10 years which are starting to see that solar radiation might have something to do with it. But the way I respond to it is that we're not in competition with Environment Canada. You know, we think that everyone thinks they're one of the great weather services in the world. We use the same data, as I said, and it's like making soup. I always say it's like making soups. So we take our ingredients, they take the same ingredients. We put them into the soup pot in different proportions. We cook them a little bit differently. We stir them a little bit differently. And in the end, we have 2 soups. Most people, and then people taste them, you know. Some people like one, some people like the other. Most people like both. So it's a win-win, we think.
And now I'm very hungry. Thank you for putting that soup thought into my head here. I noticed that the Farmer's Almanac has a set of tables to follow for planting crops and veggies. Do moon cycles maybe have an effect on those, on the growth?
Yeah, that's a different part of the old Farmer's Almanac, planting by the moon's phase. Yes, so that is like based on old traditions and folklore and so forth. So that's a different thing. And yes, it gives you the best times to plant things. I'm not going to say almost anything, but dozens and dozens of different plants and crops.
Okay, let's move ahead now to the spring and the summer of 2020. What is it looking like for the prairies?
Prairies in the spring, it's looking to be ever so slightly cooler, ever so slightly wetter, but I don't see any big problem, for farmers. Summer, a little bit warmer and a little bit drier. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be good for agriculture. It's going to be good for people who are outside. It's going to be good for golfers, so there you go. It's like the trifecta.
Yeah, that's right. Put me in that category. More of a scratch golfer, I guess, here. What does it look like for the folks in southern British Columbia for next spring and summer?
Next spring and summer, it's looking, again, a little bit cooler and a little bit wetter for BC. Summer, hotter and wetter, as opposed to warmer and wetter. So they're going to have a little bit more temperature than you.
What about the spring and summer forecast for southern Ontario, where my kids live right now?
Well, again, they're looking to be about normal temps, for spring, with a little bit less rain than normal. And then as far as summer goes, a really nice, pleasant summer, normal to slightly above normal temps, a little bit drier, should be fine.
How about southern Quebec?
Well, southern Quebec will start to see things coming off the lakes and also coming off the Atlantic. So be a little bit wetter, kind of all around in Quebec.
And what about the Atlantic provinces? New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI?
Same thing. They're going to be. It's almost like a bookend thing with BC. They're going to be hotter, and then but still with a little bit of moisture. So I think they'll have a good summer.
Now, the Almanac also includes an article on why extreme weather is on the rise. Can you explain that?
Sure. Well, we look at all kinds of changes that are happening, and the Arctic is a good place to look. And what happens basically is that there is what's called the Arctic Oscillation, which is an air current that goes around the pole, around the Arctic Circle, basically. So whenever ocean temperatures or land temperatures change dramatically, it kind of upsets the normal pattern. Think of a figure skater twirling, so it's all smooth and everything. But when something upsets it, all of a sudden this pattern starts to wobble. And when it wobbles, the cold air comes down and like a sine wave, and the colder and warmer air interact more. And so that means more storms and more quote unquote weather.
Now, you have an article called Noise, Why It's Bad for Our Health, and How People Since the Beginning of Time Have Been Fighting Against It. Tell me more about that.
Sure. Well, we started thinking these days when everybody's face everywhere, in the media, it seems, and we try to be, our two media outlets try to be, bastions of calmness and nicety. We started thinking, well, noise, what do we know about noise? So this article in the Old Farmer's Almanac Canadian edition with the yellow cover is all about everything from the invention of burglar alarms to headphones and just things about sound and noise that you ordinarily wouldn't think about.
Now, with the Almanac too, Jack, you sometimes have some bizarre stories or facts, and you have a story about Canadian money, including the time that the devil appeared in Queen Elizabeth's hair?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we should give this away, but yeah, there was actually a note printed in the 50s that people claimed to see the devil's face image in her hair. So they had to kind of go back to the drawing board and kind of, I'm not going to say straighten her hair out, but I had to rearrange the curls a little bit. That's one part of that little thing. The other one, of course, is whether it's true or false that the loonie was originally supposed to be a hockey puck. You know the answer to that? And it wasn't, but the dies to the coins got lost, and because originally it was meant to be a voyageur, not a loon. So, little things like that. The OFA, the Old Farmer's Almanac, is full of them. There's something on every page.
Well, I know what was at the 2020 or 2012 Vancouver Olympics. Some of the Canadian hockey players, they planted a loonie at center ice there for the gold medal game, hoping that it'd bring good luck for Canada. So, and it actually turned out to be good luck. We won the gold that year, so that was wonderful. Jack Burnett, the Farmer's Almanac's managing editor and Canadian spokesperson, thanks a lot for joining me today from New Hampshire.
Thank you very much, Hal. It's always a pleasure.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.